immense pride and heartfelt gratitude that I welcome you all to the 16th K.M. Bashir Memorial Lecture, an occasion instituted to honor the legacy of K.M. Bashir, where we reflect on the ideals of justice, equality, and shared humanity. The theme, Fraternity in a Secular State, the protection of cultural rights and duties, could not be more relevant in today's world. This year's lecture is particularly significant as it forms part of the K.M. Bashir Centennial celebrations that celebrate the life and legacy of K.M. Bashir, a distinguished statistician, international civil servant, visionary social thinker, and the founder of Wakam Maulavi Foundation Trust in 1986. We now officially begin today's program, graced by eminent personalities, featuring a thought-provoking public lecture, followed by an engaging interactive session. May I request all our distinguished speakers to kindly take their seats on the dais. Dr. Alexander Jacob, former Director General of Police, Kerala. Professor Jamila Begum, President, VMFT, and former Dean of the Faculty of Arts, University of Kerala. Dr. Sajida Bashir, Executive Vice Chairperson, VMFT. Engineer A. Suhair, Chairperson, VMFT. We'll now formally commence today's proceedings. I now invite Professor Jamila Begum, President of VMFT, to deliver the welcome address. She is a distinguished educationist and scholar who embodies a rare blend of academic excellence and visionary leadership. With over 3 decades of teaching and research experience at the University of Kerala, she has served as the head of the Department of English, founder director of the Center for Canadian Studies, Dean of the Faculty of Arts, and a member of the Senate. Currently, she serves as director of the Cultural Literary Forum of All India Women's Conference Trivandrum Chapter, actively contributing to contemporary cultural and educational discourse. A mentor, innovator, and leader, Professor Begum continues to inspire generations with her scholarship and unwavering dedication. I invite Professor Jamila Begum, President of VMFT, to deliver the welcome address.
Distinguished and eminent personalities who are here with us today, and our main chief guest and speaker of the day, Supreme Court Justice Nariman, and Dr. Jacob Alexander, IPS, who is here to preside at this function. A very warm welcome and greetings to all of you who have come and joined us for this very significant occasion where we celebrate the memorial of K.M. Bashir. This is the 16th memorial lecture, and we are very happy that VMFT has been able to do this continuously for the last years and come as far as the 16th memorial lecture. The VMFT, as most of you know, is an institution that was founded by K.M. Bashir and has been doing yeoman service for the society and for the community at large. We know that when Wakam Maulavi was heading the press, he was one of those who believed that there needed to be a change in society because people were still discriminated, there was still repression, social issues were not being brought to the forefront, and so he began a newspaper, the Swadesh Abhimani, to highlight these issues and to draw the attention of the rulers and the people to some of these issues. And he succeeded to a certain extent, but of course the press was shut down and the editor was sent out of the country. But some of those principles, some of those thoughts have prevailed even today. And that is because we continue to cherish the memory of Wakam Maulavi and through the VMFT Foundation. During the last many years after 1986, the VMFT has been continuously highlighting social issues, organizing seminars, conferences, training programs for the youth. We have even gone so far as to have a mobile journalism course for young journalists So new trends and new thoughts and new sounds of dissent, new voices of dissent are being encouraged by VMFT. We all know we live in a society that does not encourage equality, liberty, and fraternity, the three pillars of the Constitution. We all talk about these three concepts from our childhood, and we hold our hands up and take the oath. We, the citizens of India, are all brothers and sisters. And we know that. Even as we say it today, are we really brothers and sisters? What has this country come to? The divide that is growing more and more by the day, the oppression and discrimination that continues, and the way in which the dissent in which they try to shut out voices, majority voices shutting out minority voices. This is happening in the world every day. It is not only in India, but all over the world, where peace does not prevail, and we find that there is more of violence, war, bloodshed, more than friendship. When Ambedkar talked about the three pillars, equality, liberty, and fraternity, he put fraternity last, maybe because the French Revolution also had that in that order, equality, liberty, and fraternity. But today, I should say, the most significant pillar of the Constitution is fraternity. Unless we have fraternity, unless we have solidarity, unless we feel for one another, unless we have empathy and love for one another, there can be no equality and there can be no liberty. This is what the world has come to, and we need to rethink and revisit values like fraternity. Our chief guest here, um, Justice Nariman, has written a book on the ode to fraternity. And in this book, he draws upon many religions: Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, Jainism, Sikhism, Christianity. And then he goes on to talk about how unless fraternity survives in this world, there is no hope for humanity. There is, when we talk about what is good for us, we forget about thinking about what is good for the rest of mankind. Only if we have good, or we can think of good for ourselves and not think of good for the rest of the humanity, there can be no good for you, because they are relative, they are interdependent. It is only when everyone survives and has the ability to survive and the opportunities for equality of living and let living, we can say that there is humanity in this world. Unless this humanity is accepted and understood, not only by the older generation, but by the younger generation as well. Because this notion of brotherhood, this notion of fraternity is possible only when people begin to ask for their needs. Unless they question the prevalent social discrimination, unless they are able to call attention to themselves. Amartya Sen, in one of his writings, makes the remark that if you need something, you need to ask for it. And when you ask for it, there should be a government there who will satisfy your needs. So it's in a way a linking between the individual, the nation, and the government that rules. So unless the nation is able to satisfy the needs of everyone, there should also be the government to satisfy those needs. And of course, we know that Dr. Ambedkar said that with the diversity we have in India, diversity of cultures, of faith, religion, creed, gender. Today we talk about so many different genders, not just male and female. We have transgenders. We have so many other, what we'd say, new concepts coming up. And unless we open our mind to that, and we think only in terms of what we'd say our cultural interests, there can be no country or no nation that can be satisfying for the people of that nation. And that is what we have in today's lecture to look forward to, because we have one of the great constitutional minds with us today to tell us about what fraternity means legally, what it means in the Constitution, and how it can be applied to our day-to-day life. So with these words, I would like to warmly welcome our chief guest to this gathering. All of us know that Dr. Jacob Alexander is a very familiar face, always talking about communal harmony. He is a great profession. I would say he is one of those readers who, in effect, imbibes not just reports, but history, philosophy, theology, any other disciplines that you can name. And it is this vast reading that I think has stood Dr. Jacob Alexander, who is basically a literature student with a PhD in Indian English writing. So I think it's this wide reading. And for even, I think, a justice, it is always the ability to look beyond and out there that really molds one's character and makes us what we are. The narrowing in of our personality, the refusal to go outside our thoughts, the refusal to imbibe what is good in the world around us is what makes us very insular. And let us hope and pray that this insularity that is coming up day by day is shattered, and we all stand not in uniformity but in unity. And Dr. Jacob Alexander has always talked about this communal harmony with his immense reading and his wide scholarship. So a very warm welcome to you, Dr. Alexander Jacob. And of course, I would like to put on record the hard work that our chairman and our vice chairman, our chairman, Engineer Suhair, and our vice chairman, Sajida Bashir, have put into the organization of this meeting, this lecture, and the intellectual debates that have gone behind the choosing of this subject, and the way in which we brought these two very, I would say, intellectual figures on the stage to tell us. And I know with what they have to tell us, we keep our minds open. Let us move in unity, not in uniformity. Let us learn to accommodate different cultures. Let us learn to open up the world in peace, and let us live with happiness, helping one another. So with these words of a warm welcome to everyone here, I close my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Justice Nariman, Dr. Alexander Jacob, Professor Jamila Begum, Shri Sohair, distinguished guests and friends and fellow citizens. On the occasion of the centennial of Shri K.M. Bashir's birth, we are truly honored that Justice Rohinton accepted our invitation to deliver the memorial lecture, and he chose the theme, Fraternity in a Secular State. It's a subject that deeply resonated with the founder of VMFT. I wish to share a few words about Shri K.M. Bashir's life, his work, and the institution he founded. He would not have wanted an eulogy, only reflection on the experiences and ideas that inspired him and how they culminated in the creation of VMFT. At the time of Bashir Sar's birth in 1925, only 20% of Muslim men in Travancore had basic literacy, and almost no Muslim women could read. So their situation was comparable to that of the majority of the people, including the Dalit caste and downtrodden castes. Bashir Sar himself was a first-generation learner. the first in his family and his village to complete not only secondary school, but also postgraduate education in mathematics at the Maharaja's College, now the University College of Trivandrum. His sister was the first Muslim girl in the village to pass the 10th grade, for which she had to endure many insults. From these modest beginnings, Bashir Sar joined the regional office of the newly established National Sample Survey in Bangalore, then went on to the Central Statistical Office in Delhi, and later to the Bureau of Labor Statistics at the International Labor Office in Geneva. On returning to Kerala after retirement, he became director of the Kerala Statistical Institute. This is no doubt an impressive trajectory, but it's not unique. Many in this audience, their parents or grandparents, may have had a similar trajectory, similar path. But the important issue is how Bashir Sar viewed his own professional development. He did not attribute it only to his own hard work or his ability or to the sacrifices of his family. He always emphasized the role of society and especially Kerala's social reform movements of the early 20th century. So Travancore in his formative years, let us remember, witnessed such deep transformations. The year of his birth marked the Vaikam Satyagraha, or the culmination of it, where ordinary people boldly challenged caste exclusions and privileges. But the groundwork was laid 2 decades earlier, when reformers like Sri Narayana Guru, Ayyankali, Sahodharan Ayyappan, and Vakka Maulavi, they questioned the intellectual and philosophical and religious basis of the inequalities and injustices in the society, including in their own communities. That spirit of self-criticism to which Professor Jamila Begum also referred pervaded the atmosphere. And the idea of equal rights and of development of all sections of society began to spread. And looking back on his own success, Bashir Sar paid tribute to these new ideas, to the spread of knowledge, not just in educational institutions, but also in the public sphere, to the thinkers and reformers of the time, have some water, and to the powerful social movements that they helped create. He felt throughout his life that he owed a debt to the society which nurtured him, and he needed to contribute the transformative ideas that led to collective action. His work with the National Sample Survey left an enduring mark and shaped his outlook. Surveying rural Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka, he encountered the kind of poverty that did not exist in Kerala, far worse than what he could have imagined. And he saw that poverty stripped people of dignity and self-respect. Although the warmth and hospitality of the rural villagers stayed with him, his conclusion was clear. Without remunerative employment and livelihoods for rural people, there would be no development of India. This experience with the ground realities of rural poverty helped him understand the role of the global organizations such as the International Labor Organization. At the ILO in Geneva, he worked on global labor statistics and standards, but he also gained a front row view of international politics. And one episode which should resonate today was that in 1975, when the ILO granted observer status to the Palestine Liberation Organization, the United States withdrew funding, endangering the programs of the ILO, as well as many jobs. It was an early instance of powerful states undermining international organizations, and we see the consequences today. This experience deepened his sympathies for what we would now call the Global South. But his heart always remained with Kerala and India. The idea of creating an institution dedicated to learning, justice, and progress for all people, as well as interfaith understanding, began in Geneva, and interactions with Professor K.N. Raj, the founder of the Center for Development Studies in Trivandrum, sharpened his thoughts. Academia had an important role in society, yet he felt academia, that is universities and so on in India, remained too detached from people's needs. Knowledge should be disseminated in ways that ordinary citizens could use in public deliberation and social advancement. Further, development needs to be holistic, economic, political, cultural, and spiritual. The institution he envisioned should be rooted in the local society, but it should link up with national and global knowledge and experiences. But let me now turn to the core mission of VMFT, the idea of fraternity, which is also the focus of this lecture. I can't stress enough how important this last theme was to his conceptualization of VMFT. Soon after his death in 1990, I discovered some handwritten notes about the concept of VMFT. And I quote, "The VMFT is intended to bring understanding between religions and communities. It is a primary function. Every action by it should keep this in mind," end quote. So fraternity was central to his worldview. It is not a veneer, a coat of paint, as Ambedkar said, for VMFT. It is part of its fiber and inner core. VMFT was not envisaged as a welfare organization for a particular community. He also linked this primary function of VMFT with the issues of economic and social development. And I quote, "Economic development of the kind adopted in India will lead to tensions and conflicts. One main reason is that certain individuals and groups are better placed to snatch the opportunities and benefit from them. And often these groups are associated with castes and communities," end quote. So fraternity is undermined not only by the prejudices of common people, but also by the type of economic and political policies that are adopted by the state. VMFT was formally established in 1986, a watershed year in India, marked by the opening of Babri Masjid, the Shah Bano case, and the rise of communal mobilization. Despite this climate, VMFT was dedicated to fraternity. And Bashir Sir noted that this could be a turning point in Indian history, and how prescient was that observation. He deliberately named this institution after Vakka Maulavi, no direct relative of his, because Vakka Maulavi had been largely forgotten in Kerala's modern history, despite his outstanding role as a journalist, as a reformer, the founder of the celebrated Swadesh Abhimani. And Bashir Sir believed that restoring the neglected contributions of different communities was vital for building fraternity. He passed away in 1990, as perhaps he would have wished, on a stage at a public function like this. So there were no farewells. There was no last-minute advice or guidance. The organization was still fledgling, without a building, without a proper structure. Yet even in that brief period, VMFT became a magnet for intellectuals, activists, and NGOs. And his vision of the institution endured thanks to his family's financial and other support, and the voluntary efforts of many, many people from all communities. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, in his final speech to the Constituent Assembly in November 1949, he lamented the absence of two things in Indian society: equality and fraternity. Speaking of fraternity, he warned, and I quote, "Without fraternity, liberty would produce the supremacy of the few over the many. Without fraternity, liberty and equality could not become natural. It would require a constable, a policeman, to enforce them. Fraternity, Ambedkar said, was a principle that gives unity and solidarity to social life. So this principle must animate the legislature, executive, and judiciary in order to secure equality and liberty. In India's context, it means respect for and protection for diverse cultures and communities. This principle should underpin all economic and social policies. But above all, fraternity must live in the hearts of the people, in yours and in mine, amongst all Indians who feel they are part of one people. It must be expressed in daily actions, transmitted to children and young people as moral and civil values essential for their everyday life. And it must be reinterpreted anew by each generation to define the kind of society we want to live in. When the state fails, ordinary people must assert these values even more strongly, and institutions like VMFT must be strengthened. This, I believe, is the true legacy of Bashir Sir. Thank you very much.
Honorable Rohindran Nariman, former Justice of the Supreme Court of India, the distinguished organizers of the K.M. Bashir lectures, a distinguished audience, former Chief Secretary Vijayanand, and each one of you leaders in each of the branches you are heading, and a highly distinguished audience who are assembled in this hall. Lakhs of people who are viewing this in live telecast, and a few more lakhs who may see it in the videos which will be in the news. Welcome to all. Today we are discussing fraternity in a secular society. Now, fraternity was the culture of India. The first Idihasa, Ramayana, was written by a scheduled caste, Vatmiki. The second greatest Idihasa, Mahabharata, was written by Vedavyasa, born to a Mukwa woman, a OBC woman. And the dynasty of the Kurus, they were children of Vedavyasa in Ambika and Ambaliga, scheduled caste princesses. So by the time Pandu and Dhritarashtra came, they were almost 75 to 80% scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. We welcomed everyone from different parts of the world. When Jews came, we accepted them as brothers in this country. Israel, in its official history, published in 1952, starts with a famous paragraph. Jews went to the different parts of the world. We were ill-treated, massacred. But there is one country which never ill-treated the Jews and treated us as brothers. That is India. Official history of Israel. Zoroastrians came here. We welcomed them. They were banished from Iran. We welcomed them. We gave them all facilities. And Zoroastrians created the first millionaire, Tata. Zoroastrians created the first field marshal, Manekshaw. And Zoroastrians created the youngest Prime Minister of India, Rajiv Gandhi. When the Christians came here, we were accepted, and we were given land to construct our churches. Every church history starts saying that so-and-so king, so-and-so Nair family gave us this land and constructed the church. All Christian families, their family history starts by saying some Brahmin or some Nair donated the land and we came and settled here. Christians were accepted here. When Muslims came, they were accepted with both the hands and they lived as brothers in this country. When literature came, for example, Sanghala literature, all the writers were scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. Ilaveni was a Korati, Koromagal Chati was a Korati, and look at the kings described in the Sanghala works, where it is Padittipat or any other this thing. Most of the kings of the Sanghala period were scheduled caste kings. They were accepted. And later, Baha'is were expelled. India accepted all of them and gave them the shelter in Delhi and the biggest lotus temple the Baha'is have. Originally Iran, you cannot see Baha'is, but in India we can see the Baha'is. Ahmadiyas were expelled from Pakistan. We accepted them and we gave them shelter. And their leader Aga Khan, in whose palace Mahatma Gandhi, our leader, was saying, any religion extinguished in their country came to India, we accepted them as brothers. That was the fraternity we practiced. When Muslims came here, we had the great empires. Ashoka, the great emperor, he was a Murari, he was a scheduled caste person. Maurya Empire was scheduled caste empire. And after Akbar, after Ashoka, the great emperor who was a scheduled caste person, came Akbar. Akbar married a Hindu woman, and that Hindu woman's son Jahangir became the next emperor. In Fatehpur Sikri, Akbar constructed a temple adjacent to his palace so that his wife can go and pray. Akbar appointed as his prime minister Birbal, a Brahmin. Akbar's finance minister was Radha Tondramal, a Vaishya. Akbar's chief of army staff was Mansingh, a Rajput. Out of 12 ministers of Akbar, 10 of them were Hindus, only 2 are Muslims. And Aurangzeb is a person who gets all the foul words in the Indian history. Who was his prime minister? His prime minister was Raja Tej Bahadur. He was a Rajput. Aurangzeb's cabinet was 80% Hindu. And our rulers accepted this fraternity between religions. Krishna Devaraya, the great king of the Vijayanagara Empire, he married his only daughter to the Prince of Berar, a Muslim princess married Krishna Devaraya's daughter. That was the fraternity we practiced. Tipu Sultan, another person who gets flack in Indian history. Who was his prime minister? His prime minister was Purnaya, a Brahmin. Out of 12 ministers Tipu Sultan had, 10 of them are Hindus. And the main wife of Tipu Sultan was a Nair woman from Vadagara. And she was staying in the palace. And what did Tipu Sultan do? He constructed a temple adjacent to his palace so that Unnichara, his Nair wife, could go and pray in that temple. That is a fraternity India practiced. And in that situation, Britishers came. Britishers wanted to divide India and rule. So they fractionated the fraternity India was practicing. How did they do it? It was a meticulous thing. They wrote first the Oxford History of India. What did they do? They created a theory. All the SC/ST people of India came from Africa. They were all Negritoid people. Then what happened? The Austric people came from Europe. And their children is the Protosloids, Mundas, Gauls, and all those people. And a branch of them went to Australia to become Maoris. And then came the Dravidians. What did they call the Dravidians? The Turanic people, are people who came from the borders of Turkey and Iran. And they came and occupied South India, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and Andhra Pradesh. Then the Aryans came from Caucasian areas. Then the Kolarians came from Turkey. Their children are the Marathas and the Gujaratis. And then what happened? Then the Bactrians came, Kushans came, Greeks came, the Jews came, Christians came, Muslims came, and then Portuguese came, Dutch came, French came, English came. Who are Indians? Nobody. India is the country with the largest number of population. No Indians. That is a British history. Everybody came from outside. And you are all 8 different segments of people. Can any DNA prove this? Absolutely not. That was a British creation. In 1819, in the Oxford history, Britishers for the first time wanted to create 4 religions. India had Sanatana Dharma. Everybody belonged to it. And there was no difference. In 1819, for the first time, they coined a word, Hinduism. British English suffixes added, ism, like communism, socialism, to create a religion called Hinduism. There is no such religion called Hinduism. And they deliberately called it Hindu to mean that they came from the banks of Indus Valley. So the moment a fellow say here Hindu, he feels he is a Pakistani, he had come from Pakistan. To detonate that in your brain, the Britishers created this word, Hinduism. It is Sanatana Dharma. All of us were Sanatana Dharmis. And then in 1837, the James Prinsep, the great grandfather of Dalrymple, who wrote that Hindu history recently, his great grandfather Prinsep, he read the Ashokan edicts. For the first time, British has created another religion, Buddhism. There is no religion called Buddhism. Buddha himself was part of Sanatana Dharma. He propagated Sanatana Dharma. And Vishnu Bhagavan had two sets of avatars. In one, Malsyam, Gurmam, Varaham, Narsimha, Vamanan, Ramo, Ramacharama, Krishna, Kalki. In the second list, Balarama is not the avatar. The eighth avatar is Lord Krishna, ninth avatar is Buddha. Our Prime Minister Narendra Modi had Prana Pratishtha in Ayodhya. In Ayodhya, he listed the Dashavadar on the walls. What is the Dashavadar? Ninth avatar is Buddha. That is what is inscribed in the Ayodhya temple. But the Britishers want to create a separate religion, Buddhism. So that Buddhist majority areas like Burma, Ceylon, China and Japan should not join hands with the Hindus of India. If they join hands, the British Empire in Asia is not possible. They created another religion. 1846 they created another religion, Jainism. What is Jainism? Jainism is not a separate religion. It's part of Sanatana Dharma. Mahavira never claimed he created another religion. Out of 24 Tirthankas, 14 of them are saints and rishis of the Hindu religion. They created another religion. In 1853, they created a fourth religion, Sikhism. There is no religion called Sikhism. To fight Jahangir and Shah Jahan, the eldest sons of Hindu families were given to the Sikh Panth to fight the Mughal Empire. It was not a different religion. Guru Nanak never claimed it is a different religion. Britishers deliberately created four religions to make us fight. And then in 1861, they created the Asiatic Society, in which they started manipulating India's sacred text. Hindus had 1108 Upanishads. Britishers published 1338 Upanishads. Where did the other 230 Upanishads came? Artificially manufactured by the British to create havoc in India. The Upanishads were not in the list of Hindus, artificially created by them. They took the Manusmriti, made 56 corrections, and they made a saying that if Shudra hear the Vedas, molten lead should be poured on their ears. Where is it? It is not in the Manusmriti. Britishers added it, 56 corrections to create the difference between us. All this manipulation did. And in 1861, they had a master stroke. That is, the census according to caste was taken. India had four castes, Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. Then Panchamas, who are not in the list of these four. Britishers created the census, and by the time the 1881 census is over, 7,642 castes were created in India. 7,642 castes. Brahmins were only 1%. Now the Brahmins were divided as Ayers, Iyengars, Pattar, Nambudiri, Namburippad. 58 classifications. Nayars, 12% of Kerala's population. They divided in such a way that Pilla is separate, Kurpi is separate, Nayar is separate, and then Padakurpi is separate, Menon is separate, this Elayad is separate, then Vallitan is separate, Unnitan is separate, Tangal is separate. My God, the Nayars are divided in such a way. The Idavas, they were divided in 22 sections. Idavas, Tiya, Billavas, Iluva, Iva, like that. They were separated. Kuravas, hardly around 4 lakhs. They were divided into 16 sections. Melalakuran, Kidalakuran, Nanjikuran, Manjikuran, like that. The difference. This is how they manipulated 7,642 castes. And then in 1861 to 64, they created a master stroke. What they did, they brought in Max Muller, who was a German who had no idea what is Sanskrit. He was brought to Oxford University, and the Britishers created a history in the name of Max Muller. 3 Sanskrit professors went to the conference in London. They went and started speaking Sanskrit in front of Max Muller. Max Muller asked, which language are you speaking? He had no idea. And that fellow was made to write a 50-volume Sacred Books of the very good book, and I have it myself. Sacred Books of the East. And there he created the Aryan theory. Aryans were originated in Caucasian fields, and one set of Indo-Europeans came to India and created Brahmin, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas. The other branch went to Germany, France, and England, and 2 branches. So British said, Brahmin, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, we are cousins. Our fathers are the same. We are cousins. You fight along with us to suppress the others. That was the malignity, malign nature of the British thinking. And then this Aryan theory percolated into Europe, ultimately created Hitler and the Second World War. Within 60 years, Hitler was created out of this theory. Completely false theory. There is nothing called race in this world, according to anthropology. Artificial creation to hint that we are together. And Vivekananda went to the World Council of Religions, and then he made a speech, brothers and sisters of America, Britishers published it worldwide. Vivekananda has accepted the Aryan theory that the Europeans, Americans, or the Indians are the same. You see, anybody speaking in Hindi, our Prime Minister Narendra Modi will speak in Hindi. Bhaiyo mar behano, this is what Hindi, you start a speech. This Bhaiyo mar behano, Vivekananda simply translated to English, brothers and sisters of America. And the Britishers created in India a theory with which our fraternity can be broken. This is what they did. 1906, they created the Muslim League. 1905, they divided Bengal. East Bengal, Muslim, West Bengal, Hindu. 1911, they split Punjab. West Punjab, Muslim, East Punjab, Hindu. And they created this massive complication between the religions. And in 1922, they created another master stroke of forgery. Discovery of the Indus Valley civilization. Indus Valley had 1,700 cities. And then they created their Dravidians. The script itself is not read, but they said it is Dravidian. So that Malayalis, Tamilians, Karnataka and Andhra people can be separate from North Indians. North India separate, Dravidian South India. This is what their master stroke is done. And in the after the Salt Satyagraha, they called a round table conference. There, Britishers decided there should be 3 separate electorates. Muslim electorate, Hindu electorate, and an SC/ST electorate. The great Ambedkar told Mahatma Gandhi, this is a trap. Mahatma, don't accept it. And Mahatma, they refused to sign the round table conference. But Britishers persisted on SC/ST separation and the other separation to 2 constituencies in the 1937 elections. So Britishers created this problem, destroying our fraternity. In last 3,000 years, we are nothing like this. So I was allowed only 15 minutes. She has told that time is up. Now, after independence, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru and Indira Gandhi continuously defended secularism. It was added into the constitution and fraternity was maintained. But by 1975 onwards, caste parties came into existence, religious parties came into existence, and vote was used in religious base as well as in caste base to separate India. And India's fraternity was broken. Now you and me should stand firm that our fraternity, which we kept for the last 4,000 years, should be brought back. And India should be one, a mighty nation, which the whole world respect, for which our fraternity in our secular state has to be restored. Thank you very much.
Dignitaries on the dais, ladies and gentlemen, what we are about to discuss is 2 cardinal values of our Constitution. You've already heard that one of the cardinal values was in the original preamble, but the second was only added by the 42nd Amendment, which in any case made no difference because it was already there in many of the fundamental rights. But let's begin at the beginning. The preamble begins with the words, "We, the people of India." We, the people of India, does not mean we, the majority of the people of India, or we, the adult male population of India. It is we, the people. We are therefore all the people of India. That is something that must never be forgotten. So it is all the people of India who give themselves this constitution. And the important values that are there in the constitution are first outlined in the preamble. So that for the first time we are sovereign, we are no longer governed by another power. We are democratic because we elect our governments. And we are a republic because we have an elected president at the head. justice has to inform every part of life. And then after that, you have the famous French Revolution cry, liberté, égalité, and fraternité. Now, liberty is of thought, expression, and then what we are concerned directly with is faith, worship, and belief. Because that is one of the important prongs of secularism as we know it in this country. So it is already there. It's a misnomer to say that secularism was introduced only by the 42nd Amendment. Some part of it was always already there. Then you have equality of status and opportunity. And the subject matter of today's talk, which is the single pivot on which everything else works, which is fraternity. Now, what does fraternity do according to the preamble? There are two very, very important things that it does. It assures first the dignity of every individual citizen. It is very important because it reflects the opening lines of the preamble. We, all the people of India. So the dignity of every citizen first. And second, it is crucial for the unity and integrity of the nation. Now, secularism, according to me, is an absolute must as a stepping stone towards achieving fraternity. You cannot have fraternity in a theocratic state. So therefore, what is secularism is going to be the first part of my lecture. Now, secularism is fleshed out, as I told you, in chapter 3 of the Fundamental Rights chapter. And you have three basic strands. The first is that the state shall have no religion. And this you find from Article 28 first, because 28 says that there shall be no religious instruction in educational institutions that are maintained wholly from state funds. So the state can't have or can't teach religion, first. Second, an exception to it is contained in 28(2), which is that if the state actually administers an institution which is set up by a trust for a religious purpose, then religion may well be taught. But that's a specific private trust which happens to set up the trust only for the purpose of teaching a particular religion. And then 28(3), which is equally important because it goes to private educational institutions. And the moment a private educational institution is either recognized or aided by the state, then though it may engage in common prayer, it may engage in religious instruction, no student is bound to take part in it compulsorily. So this is the first strand of secularism as we know it in our constitution. Our constitution, by the way, is unique in that it contains each of these three strands. Many other constitutions don't. And they speak of a wall of separation between the church and the state. We have no such wall. So what we have is first, the state having no religion of its own. Second, the state then cannot also discriminate against citizens on grounds of religion. This you find in a sweeping statement made in Article 15(1) to start with. Under Article 16(2), huge public employment is given to all our citizens. There again, the state cannot discriminate on grounds of religion. 3, under Article 29(2), if anybody wants admission to an educational institution which is aided by the state, there again, though it may be private, and of course in a situation where the state wholly manages it, it goes without saying that there can be no such discrimination. And finally, under Article 32, every minority institution which has a right to establish and administer the institution of its choice equally cannot be discriminated on the ground that aid is being given to it. So this really exhausts now the second branch of what secularism means in our constitutional scheme. The third is the most important, because the third is the positive right now of the individual. And the positive right of the individual is first against his individual citizens. And this you find in 15(2) and 17. Under Article 15(2), every citizen has a right to access to every shop, restaurant, hotel, or other place of public entertainment, even though it be privately owned. No discrimination can be practiced there on grounds of religion. Second, equally, every citizen is entitled to use wells, bathing ghats, etc., which are all maintained wholly or partially out of state funds or dedicated generally to the use of the public, like roads. Equally, under Article 17, untouchability is pronounced now to be a crime. Parliament has in fact made it a crime. And it reaches out to every single citizen, not to practice it against any other citizen. Then we have the extremely important right that is given now to every single citizen under Article 25. 25 begins with the words, all persons are equally entitled. Equal is very important. Equal has two meanings. One, equality within. Therefore, men and women of a particular denomination. And equally along with every other. Endogamous. So all persons are equally entitled to do what? To freedom of conscience first. And second and most important, and these are pregnant words, each one of them means something. To practice, profess, propagate. Now, every one of us practices religion at home. Every one of us practices religion in a mosque, a church, a temple, etc. But we are given another right. We are given the right also to have emblems of our religion all over ourselves, which is the right to profess. And the Constitution expressly says the carrying of a kirpan by a Sikh is part of that right. So we are able, therefore, to say that turbans, tikas, and every other religious object that may be on our person is something that is a fundamental right that we can carry with us. And now we come to the problematic expression, propagate. Now, propagate was not there originally. It was added at the instance of K.M. Munshi because he expressly said, look at our Christian community. It is fundamental to the Christian community to be able to convert, to be able to bring persons over so that they can be saved by belief in Jesus. Propagate was brought, but unfortunately our Supreme Court in 1977, in the Reverend Stanislaus judgment, which is criticized greatly by Sirvai, our former constitutional authority, held that propagate does not mean the right to convert. It only means the right to say something about your faith, which in any case is subsumed in the earlier right and in the right to freedom of speech and expression. So they actually almost cut the word out. The result, of course, is this slew of legislation now that we see all over the country, where even conversion, though it is not by force, intimidation, etc., but merely by means of persuasion is now sought to be interdicted. This is something that the Supreme Court ought to, according to me, revisit at the earliest. Unfortunately, Stanislaus is a 5-judge bench judgment. They'll have to constitute a larger bench to look into this. So we have these 3 rights in every individual. But are they subject to anything? Yes, they are subject to some 5 exceptions which are very carefully thought out. First and foremost, the exceptions are public order, morality, and health. Now, public order obviously is a riot situation. You cannot exercise or freely exercise your religion on the streets and create a riot. Short of that, you may do so. So this is exception 1. The other exception is morality. Now, in morality, we've already exhausted the gamut of so many things. We've had female infanticide, for example. We've had sati. We have had all sorts of, we've had temple prostitution. All these come within morality. So that in the interest, therefore, of morality, the state can put curbs on a religious practice. And finally, health. Now, health is again something that needs to be tested. I find today, every faith seems to get louder in its protestations and is making the Lord deaf. I find today that either a person is screaming in a microphone from a mosque or another is banging temple bells. All this must stop because this creates noise pollution. And if it creates noise pollution, it is covered by health primarily straight away. And every state should, at the earliest, according to me, first ban loudspeakers and ban this kind of thing, this bell ringing, etc., which disturbs people early morning and disturbs people's sleep. So it is again something that the state must take into its hand and do it down the board, so that again you can't say that you are favoring X or favoring Y. You stop it completely. You can have loudspeakers in auditoriums like this, where everybody wants to hear somebody and nothing goes out. But you can't have loudspeakers outside, which creates a nuisance. So this is the first exception. The second exception is you cannot exercise your faith so as to impede on the faith of others. Obvious. So it therefore says subject to the other rights contained, the other fundamental rights. Now, the other fundamental rights could be the rights under 15.2. I told you, for example, the use of public wells, bathing ghats, discrimination generally in public places, and the practice of untouchability. So that would probably fall under the second exception. The third exception is any secular activity which is associated with religious faith. For example, a temple may collect huge donations, which it may not be questioned about under its trust, but the state can certainly step in and say, no, these donations need to be used for the betterment of the temple, the betterment of the people who come and pray at the temple, etc. Then fourth, we have another problem area. Social welfare and reform. At least one judge in the Supreme Court has taken the view, and now it's up for grabs before 9 judges, that you cannot, under the guise of social welfare and reform the essential part of any religion out of existence. But that has yet to be tested. God alone knows what 9 will hold. We in our wisdom held something in the Sabrimala judgment and was snubbed for it, as you know. So this is exception 4. And then exception 5 is the famous throwing open of Hindu religious institutions to all denominations of Hindus, no matter what caste or whatever they belong. Now, having told you about what secularism essentially means in our constitution, and the fact that the moment there is some infraction, you can, as of right, petition a writ court and get relief. What is the position per fraternity? Unfortunately, till our fundamental duties came in 1976, the position was that the single pivot on which everything turns was hardly enforceable. I mean, it was something that was said in the air. That's all very well to speak of fraternity, but what happens when on the ground, history books, for example, are distorted today? We were just discussing one of our greatest emperors, along with Ashoka, is Akbar. I was flabbergasted to find in a particular book, and a child read it out to me, to find that Akbar is stated to be a person who is a tyrant and a person who organized mass murders at Chittor, where so many women committed Johar. And that's pretty much all that was said about him. And almost nothing was said about any of the great Mughals. So complete effacement, number 1, followed by a total distortion. Now, what can we do about these things today? You have fundamental duties, as I told you, which now speak of many things. First fundamental duty is to the Constitution, that every citizen must abide by the Constitution, its ideals, its institutions. It must respect the national flag, which I'll come to in a moment, because that should remind us of fraternity. I'm going to tell you how. Second, it should also promote harmony so that there can be a common brotherhood. This is directly fraternity, which transcends religious and other barriers. Most important. Then you come to another fundamental duty, and the fundamental duty is that to one another equally, we must abjure violence and we must protect public property. And one more very basic duty. We must never forget that ours is a rich treasure trove of composite culture. The expression used is composite. Very, very important. Now, unlike the directive principles of state policy, which expressly are not enforceable in courts, Article 36, you cannot enforce a directive principle. A legislature must look at these principles and attempt to enact laws in accord with these principles. Unlike that, there is no Article 36 in Article 51, capital A, where it speaks of fundamental duties. And every duty has a correlative in a right. Because if it is my duty to behave in a particular manner, and I have breached that duty, then there is a right, a concomitant right in somebody to petition a court and come forward. Now, obviously, if you have fundamental duties which are in the nature of mere exhortations, as for example, the fundamental duty to remember the noble values of our freedom struggle, you can't come to court and say this man is breaching the noble freedoms of our great struggle. But what you can do in cases which breach fraternity, and particularly in the history textbooks which are rewritten this way, you can petition a writ court and say, look, this goes directly contra to the principle which speaks of harmony, which speaks of fraternity, which speaks of composite culture, and instead of preserving that composite culture, you are attacking it. Therefore, please reverse it. The court would have no expertise to do so itself. It could perhaps order some panel of experts to look into it and restore what our actual history is. This is only a suggestion made by me. But prevention is always better than cure. And for prevention, I have done my little bit by publishing 40 years of my effort in a book called An Ode to Fraternity. But before I tell you about that book, the first important thing is to remember that the first fundamental duty is to respect the national flag. Now, Lady Bikaiji Kama at Stuttgart in a fair unfurled a particular tricolor. It was not our tricolor. It in fact had green on top. It had 8 white lotuses, which were the 8 provinces of India. Then it had a yellow band in between with the words Vande Mataram written. Because as you know, Vande Mataram is our national song. It didn't make it to national anthem, which is Jana Gana Mana. And below that, you had a red band with a crescent, which spoke of the Muslims, and the sun, which spoke of perhaps the rest of the community. Now we've come a long way from that flag. In 1931, that flag was completely changed. And finally, you had the same 3 colors we have today in the same order, but with something very different in between. You had Gandhiji's spinning wheel in between. The spinning wheel being that we should be self-reliant. The idea was self-reliance. A committee was set up by the Constituent Assembly who looked into this flag and then replaced that wheel with one of our great emperor's emblems, Ashoka's emblem taken from the lion at Sarnath, correct? And this particular emblem denotes the wheel of dharma. This is very important. Dharma being the moral law in this case. And now we come directly to Ashoka's 12th rock edict. Because that 12th rock edict speaks of how best you can propagate dharma. And he says that I want all my people to hear this very carefully. I want every one of you to go out and extol the other person's faith, not your own. Because by so doing, you will be giving everybody a good idea of what that faith is and praising it. And by the way, you'll also be praising your own. If you do the opposite, then you will really be denigrating your own faith. And he said, therefore, I want my citizenry to be well informed. Very important. Well informed means first, inform yourself about everybody else's faith. So that there may be concord. He uses another beautiful expression. Concord is exactly fraternity. And this is how best we can serve Dharma. Radhakrishnan, who was our great president, spoke of the saffron part as meaning disinterestedness, the green part as meaning we are a part of an agrarian economy. But the middle part is very important. The white band is supposed to denote peace, harmony among all faiths. So there you have fraternity written large in your flag. So every time you people see the national flag, never forget that fraternity is the first thing that stares you in the face. And remember, the white portion is the portion which speaks of everybody's harmony. And the chakra is as to how you achieve it. You achieve it by serving Dharma, and you serve Dharma by studying everybody else's faith and not denigrating it. So this is a beautiful way of performing our first fundamental duty under Article 51, capital A. And now I come to my book. My book was written, and incidentally, it has a foreword by both the Dalai Lama and by Cardinal Gracious, both of whom are great leaders who believe completely in peace and in the harmony of all religious faiths. The Dalai Lama in his foreword reminds us that the goal of every world religion is happiness. So why do we create so much trouble on the way? All of us ultimately want to lead to happiness. Let everybody lead to happiness in his own way. And Cardinal Gracious tells us that, look, there may be so many bewildering differences between all the religious faiths, but at bottom it's all the same. As you sow, so shall you reap. How you sow may differ from faith to faith. How you reap may differ from faith to faith. But as you sow, so shall you reap. And ultimately, in my introduction, I have in fact defined fanatics as persons who they may belong to any creed, any caste, any faith. Persons who first don't know their own faith. If they knew their own faith, they wouldn't be fanatics, first. And second and most importantly, since they don't know their own, where are they going to know somebody else's? Out of question. So, to get rid of fanaticism, it is very, very important to spread the word and to spread how each religion may have its own permute, combine as to where we go, how we go, etc. But at bottom, it is the same. No religion tells you, please go ahead and be immoral. Every religion is a moral code. And if you live by that moral code, fine. If you don't, you're in trouble. And the trouble is, you may be in trouble, but there may be so many else in trouble along with you. Because you carry so many down with you. If you traverse the violent path, for example. So I have divided the book now into several parts. The first deals with the monotheistic faiths. And I picked up my own, which is perhaps the oldest. You start with it, you carry on to Judaism, Christianity, Islam, then finally Sikhism, Bahaism. Now, the important points of similarity I have pointed out in the book. There's no time to get into them here, except to point out that this earth is really but a moment. Everything is concentrated on the world to come. There will be a heaven, there will be a hell, dependent upon deeds done here, a final cut-off judgment day, and then a resurrection where everybody can peaceably coexist, fraternity in its widest sense. This is the Zoroastrian model followed largely by Christianity and Islam. Judaism, on the other hand, first dealt with the afterlife as something almost irrelevant. Sheol was something like Hades in the Greek philosophy. But then slowly Persian influence crept up, and there were one group of Jews who then started believing in the afterlife. And that's become a central tenet now of their faith, resurrection as well. Sikhs, of course, believe very, very importantly in service to mankind, which is a great tenet. Baha'is believe in nearest to God and being far from God. That you get near to God, you are happy. If you get far from God, etc. And if you can get near to God, you can only do so, again, by traversing the moral path. You have the non-theistic faiths then, which also teach you great lessons. In Jainism, for example, what you have is the 5 vows of a monk which every Jain is supposed to carry out. The first of which is ahimsa. Now, if every one of us was a Jain, and non-violence was a credo of every one of us, come what may, there's no question of self-defense, nothing. The world would be a much better place to live in. So you have ahimsa first. Then you have aparigraha, which is absence of desire. You give up desire. And you'll be much happier. Contentment naturally follows if you give up desire. Then you have astaya, don't steal. Then you have celibacy. And you also have the very important, sorry? Yeah. So you have these 5 things in Jainism. And they, of course, teach you that there is no God. That's neither here nor there. That's their belief. Fine. And they teach you now how to get out of this huge circle of reincarnation. And the following of these 5 ways is perhaps the way in which you go out. And your Jeev, which is your spirit, which was always eternal and always happy and free, it came into contact with Pudgal, that is matter, got contaminated, and then you get rid of the contamination, send it back to its original state. So that is Nirvana in Jainism. Buddhism, Nirvana is something very different, complete snuffing out. And because everything is momentary, there's nothing that is, everything subject to change. And the Buddha's great central message was that you must recognize that you are born with suffering first, and the way out, therefore, is to follow the great eightfold path, which according to him was a middle path. No extreme asceticism on the one hand, and no extreme indulgence on the other. And what is the middle path? Again, back to the good old Zoroastrian, good thoughts, good words, good deeds. Of course, it's put different. Right, put differently. Right action, right words, right meditation, right speech, etc. Then you have 2 very interesting Chinese religions, which as far as I know, are not practiced here. Incidentally, I attended the Chicago Parliament of World Religions, the 130th anniversary of Swami Vivekananda's speech. And we were all made to sign some 25 principles of morality. And there were 25 of us chosen from different faiths. So I represented the Zoroastrian faith. Just above me was a Confucian who signed as a Confucian. So it's very much a practiced faith today. And it's a fabulous faith because, though again it doesn't speak of God, and it's concerned with here and now, like Buddhism, it speaks of the superior man. Now the superior man is who? Again, a man who practices virtue. And the important thing it tells you is how to inculcate family life, family virtues, to worship your ancestors, etc. And equally interesting is Tao, because Tao is just blend with nature. And they give you the example of water. Water is something that is soft, but over centuries it can flatten the hardest rock. So they give you that example and they tell you, blend with nature. And everything that goes wrong is because you don't blend with nature. Now you come to the major problem area, Hinduism. Because Hinduism is so vast and the choice is so great that is baffling. You first study the Vedas. In the Rig Veda, in the 10th mandala, you have so many creation hymns. There's no time to get into them just now. All beautiful speculations of how we all came into being. The last one being 129, where the one that existed and breathed by itself must have created us. Perhaps the gods in heavens know, perhaps they know not. And it ends on that enigmatic note. You have the Upanishads. And in the 13 Upanishads which I have dealt with in my book, you have some very beautiful stories which give you the central message. The oldest of them is the Brihadaranya. And the Brihadaranya Upanishad has that famous 3 lines. From the unreal, lead me to the real. From darkness, lead me to light. From death, lead me to immortality. And it has this constant saying of the word neti. Describe Brahman. Is it this? Neti. Is it that? Neti. Indescribable. You have to experience it. In the Chandogya, you have that famous statement of Tattvamasi, where you have a father and a son, Uddalaka and Shvetaketu. And Shvetaketu is asked by his father, you for 12 years you have been studying. What have you studied? And have you studied anything about Brahman, about the spirit, etc.? So the son tells him, I haven't studied any such thing, father. So he said, please realize that the universe is built on this truth. Everything is built on this building block. It is like salt in water. You can't see it. You have to feel it. And that Davat, Tattvamasi, that is within you, that building block. Then, of course, you have, of course, there's no time just now. So many beautiful things. Then there is the Katha Upanishad, where again in the Katha Upanishad, you have again another father and another son, Vajravas and his son Nakiketa. And they have another spat because the son tells the father, what is this nonsense? You seem to be giving away everything which is not helping anybody that you're giving these things to. So the father says, all right, I'll give you away as well. So he said, give me away. So he said, who do I give you away? Death. Go to Lord Yama. So the son goes to Lord Yama. And he waits 3 days and nights before Lord Yama appears. So Lord Yama tells him, I've got to give you 3 boons. I have kept you waiting so long. So the first boon was, restore me to my father. Easily done, all right. Second boon was, teach me about a fire sacrifice. Equally easily done. Third question was deadly. What happens to a man after he dies? To that, Yama said, I can't tell you. So he said, no, you said you have to give me 3 boons. So you have to tell me. And finally, the answer Yama gives is something unbelievable. He says, in life, many people do what is good, many people do what is pleasant. Doing of good alone will reach you here. Doing of what is pleasant will never reach you here. So it's a very interesting comparison now, not between good and evil, but good and pleasant. Another brilliant thought, and there are so many like this. Now, post-Upanishads, what do you come to? You come to the 6 famous schools, 2 of which are atheistic, and you learn so much from them. Most of them believe in Gyan Yoga. But before we come to the schools, we come to the Bhagavad Gita, which is the most important of them all. Because in the Bhagavad Gita, you're told that you are bound by the coils of action. You cannot escape action. Therefore, do action correctly and renounce the fruits that you get, if you can do so. Then it tells you there are 3 ways to God. You have the Gyan Yoga, you have the Bhakti Yoga, and you have the Karma Yoga. It says Gyan is so difficult in chapter 7 that of 1,000 persons who seek perfection, only one does. And of that group of perfectionists, those who seek God, only one gets from Gyan. Don't try it. Too difficult. Second, Bhakti Yoga, equally difficult. Third, Karma Yoga, that is available to every one of us. Do your duty correctly and without expectation of reward, you will reach the same place. And then it also tells you about the 3 guns, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. So that you remember that every time you do something, do it with a good motive, do it with a sattvic motive, don't do it with a rajasic motive, which is the idea to grab. And above all, don't do it with a tamasic motive, which is out of ignorance or delusion. So again, there's no time to speak about this, but you learn all these things from the Gita. And then when you come to the 6 philosophical schools, most important of all is Vedanta. And Shankaracharya advocates what the Bhagavad Gita says you'll never reach, Gyan Yoga. And that is Advait, pure Advait. Vishishta Advait, Ramanuja tells you no, you can get to the same but by Bhakti Yoga. Again, very, very difficult. Madhvacharya does the same thing, again Bhakti Yoga. So these are all brilliant paths of going to the Almighty. You can learn a lot in all this. And then ultimately, of course, it's how people live today, by the stories in the Purans, by the stories in the epics, etc. So, finally coming to the bottom line. What best can you learn from each religious faith in one line? From Zoroastrianism, you can learn the great triad of good thoughts, good words, good deeds, which leads you to God. From Judaism, you can learn adherence to the law, because if you break the law, you break the covenant with God, nothing less. From Christianity, you can learn love your neighbor as yourself and love God with all your heart and all your soul. From Islam, you can learn that everything that is done for you is for the good. So-called suffering is also so that you ultimately veer towards God and go to God. From the Sikhs, you can learn the great concept of langar. Everybody, however big he is, ultimately can come down and feed another person, and that person can belong to any denomination. From the Baha'is, you can learn this great thing about nearness to God, conceptually, and being far from God. Yearn to be near to God. That yearning has to be there. Like you yearn for something, your next meal or whatever. You know? That same yearning has to be there. If you have that yearning, you will reach God. And then from the great atheistic faiths, I've already told you, ahimsa is the greatest principle, which if everybody followed, there'd be no violence from the Jains. From the Buddhists, follow the fact that you are in suffering and that you get out of that suffering by following again the moral precepts laid down by the Buddha. From Confucianism, you follow family virtues and virtue itself. And from the Tao, you follow resignation to your fate. Go by nature. Hinduism, I've already told you, at bottom, everything is karma. And karma, of course, acts in different ways. It acts in reincarnation, it acts in heaven and hell as well. So that you exhaust whatever you have and then go back to being reincarnate. Now, therefore, we come to the end of this lecture. What would I exhort all of you to do now as citizens of India? Governments may come, governments may go. Constitutional values endure. That you have to remember first. And second, that every time you see your national flag, never forget to remind yourself of the cardinal virtue of treating every other citizen as your brother. That is at the center of the flag, that is the basis of the flag, and that is the basis of the Constitution. Because in the ultimate analysis, the stakes are very high. The stake is nothing less than the dignity of the individual and the unity and integrity of this great country. Thank you.
I deem the basic structure of our constitution cannot be changed. It has been clearly stated.
That's the other book I've written. You can carry on.
It has been clearly stated in the preamble of our constitution that India is a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. That preamble denotes the basic structure of our constitution, which cannot be changed. Please give a briefing on it.
Yeah. Can you all hear me? This mic on? Just put it. Can you all hear me? Okay. There's another book I have come out with recently, which is exactly this, basic structure. Now, the reason why our courts evolved basic structure, and it was a 13-judge bench in Kesavananda Bharti's case, by a razor-sharp majority, 7-6. The reason why they evolved it was obviously because constitutional amendments were getting out of hand. This is a constitution that you can amend very easily. For some reason, the founding fathers thought that they did not really get everything right and that they ought to wait for an elected parliament, which happened in 1952, to have a re-look at the constitution and then change it to suit India's needs. That perhaps was their thinking at that time. That was fine. But then if you wanted to push through something which would, for example, change or convert a democracy into a dictatorship, you could do one very simple change which didn't even need ratification by the states. You could just prolong the life of the Lok Sabha. Now, if the Lok Sabha life is 5 years, just replace it by 15 years, so that the ruling party goes on for another 10 years without elections. That you could do very easily, that did not need ratification. And that you can do by a simple 2/3 majority in parliament. Mind you, theoretically, you can do it with less than half. Why? You have to have a minimum of half, the house. If you imprison the other half, you've got half anyway. And then you require a 2/3 of that half. So with 1/3, you can actually change the constitution and completely deface it. Now, faced with dilemmas like this, ultimately, thank God, A majority of 7 to 6 said, no, this cannot be done. This has to face a further test in courts. And it's a substantive test. That have you done something which has damaged anything which could be called the basic structure or an essential feature. And no sooner did they lay it down than the great 39th Amendment came, by which the Prime Minister and the Speaker were put above the law. And something amazing was said in that amendment, which is that you will apply no law to a particular judgment of the Allahabad High Court when you decide the appeal. You'll just allow the appeal. Now, if things like this could be passed as constitutional amendments, of the 5 judges, 4 were minority judges in Keshavananda Bharati when they heard Mrs. Gandhi's case. 4 of them applied basic structure to strike down this constitutional amendment. So that, fortunately, has come to stay, no matter what some politicians at some point of time keep saying. Yes.
Thank you. We have a lot of young people here, law students also, and others. Is there anybody who would like to ask a question from?
Sir, my name is Sajid Kumar P. My question is, in this day of digital era, means in this day of Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg.
Sorry, I can't hear
Just
very
speak
well.
up, I can't follow you.
Yeah.
Come here,
In this,
come in front.
in this day of digital era, is there a possibility of their updation of that preambles in this relevant in this nowadays?
Sorry.
In this day of digital era, means now the days of digital era, is there any updation possible in that preambles and like that?
Digital law. Digital law. Is there an upgradation in the Constitution?
No, there's no such. No. Not to my knowledge, no.
No, digital. Okay.
No, just hang on 1 minute. Okay. Any other question? Yeah, please. Could you give the mic to him, please?
Sir, it was a privilege listening to you directly, and I should, of course, thank the Trust for bringing you to Thiruvananthapuram. I listened to whatever you said very closely, but one thing which strikes me is there are now societies, nations in the world, where a majority of people do not believe in any religion, and they do not seem to be worse off for it. The kind of values that you described as based on religious principles are being practiced by these nations which do not, avowedly or publicly profess or practice a religion, whereas in our country we know for a fact that we are very, very overtly religious. So I'm just thinking whether we are having too much of religion, which is working against the higher principles which you spoke of, which is there in the books. And I remember Vivekananda saying about Hinduism, no religion in the world, speaks of the dignity of man in so lofty a strain as Hinduism. And no religion has trampled upon the poor in such a, drastic manner as Hinduism. Something to this effect. Yeah. This is my...
Yes. May I answer you immediately? Soviet Russia and communist China did not believe in religion. I'm just telling you as a fact. The greatest mass murderers in history were Comrade Mao and Comrade Stalin. Now, why were they the greatest mass murderers in history? Because there were no moral constraints. First thing that a religion teaches you is moral constraint. Now, there may be the bad side of religion which you need to tackle, like Swami Vivekananda. And therefore he tried to reform the bad parts in Hinduism. But you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And the baby is very important. Now, if the baby has nothing to do with moral constraints, then it's up to you to do as you feel. Some may follow moral constraints on their own by being atheists. Now, for example, the Jains are atheists. But look at the rigorous moral constraints which they live under. And in fact, it's such a fantastic faith because though they don't believe in God, they believe that you cannot cause suffering to any living creature. They go way beyond man, way beyond the other great faiths. So you could be atheistic, but at the same time you have to have moral constraints. If you teach moral constraints as a central part of whatever you are, no problem.
Okay, there's one question there, and then there's a question there, and then
Can you
here.
turn this fan, please?
Please go ahead.
Turn it around.
Yeah.
I don't want it on.
My question is that the religious dogmas, they are so strict like the basic structure.
Yeah.
And they promise a life after beyond death.
Yes.
So they are willing to die and kill for it.
Yes.
So how can we make people more reasonable in their religious beliefs?
We don't set out to make people anything. We set out only to do whatever we think is right and to live and let live. If the other gentleman believes in something, fine, let him believe whatever he likes. He has complete freedom to believe what he likes. So long as he doesn't impinge upon somebody else with violence, that's all. Violence is the basic thing, according to me. So long as you believe whatever you like without violence, up to you entirely.
Okay, just 1 minute. I think there's a young man there. Could you speak, and then I will.
To the Honorable Justice, at this current moment, what is the relevance of fraternity at the global stage, especially amid exclusionary actions taken by those in power?
Today, according to me, it is the single most important cardinal value which needs to be taught. Incidentally, the UN Declaration of Human Rights, Article 1 speaks of fraternity. The very first thing is fraternity. The spirit of common brotherhood. Now, where are we? My God. Where is brotherhood? There's only fratricide. Brother is only killing brother in the world. There's nothing like fraternity. So we appear to be following the exactly opposite path. The sooner we get onto this path, the better for all of us.
Yes, sir. Please.
Sir, thank you very much for that very thought-provoking lecture. I was struck by a couple of things in your lecture. The first was this reference to K.M. Munshi and this right to propagate. And then you also referred to the national flag and drew your attention to the wheel, Ashoka Chakra, which talks about propagating dharma. Now, I was wondering, why is it that the court does not really factor that in while debating this very seminal point that becomes a bone of contention of propagation. So what is it that we propagate? We talk about saluting the national flag every day. We acknowledge that. But why is it that even the judiciary seems to be forgetting something like this? That's the feel that I got from your lecture. Pardon me if I'm wrong. But why does this happen? That's my question.
What I tried to convey to you was that there is a Supreme Court judgment which needs to be corrected. The Supreme Court judgment says propagate has to stop at conversion. There can be no conversion. Now, what it forgets straight away is the concomitant right of the person to be converted. Now, I can follow any religion I choose. I can change my religion midstream, correct? And that's recognized by Article 18 of the UN Declaration, specifically. That you have the right to change your religion midstream and go. Now, if somebody persuades you to a particular point of view, how can you stop him? It's my simple thing. It's part of your right to freedom of speech and expression. So if I persuade you to a particular point of view and you accept, fine. Who am I to stand in the way? But if the persuasion happens to be with intimidation, with force, with brandishments of other kinds, certainly interdict. Nobody stops you. That's a misuse. But if you are converted purely by teaching you about a particular faith and saying there's a great faith to follow, come and join us, I see nothing wrong.
There's a question online, so I will read it out. But I just want to also add that I think the question of moral code is really essential, whichever religion or lack of religion there is. And that is really the final point. You can profess anything, but if you don't have basic morality, then you can justify anything also. So the question is, I'm not sure whether I fully understand it, but let me say it as it is. Now in this age of digital of digital era, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, and so on, is there any possibility of amendment of the preambles in accordance with today's era?
It has nothing to do with these gentlemen. It has to do with the gentlemen in Parliament. Now, if the gentlemen in Parliament choose to follow something these gentlemen do, God alone knows what they choose these days, then fine, yes. But by God's grace today, no single party has that majority to tinker with the Constitution. By God's grace, again I say. Yes.
Yes.
Thank
sir.
you for the opportunity you given to me. I am Tirumala Satyadas, a devotee of Jagadguru Swami Satyananda Saraswati. I have written a book, World is One Family, How and Why. We are all brothers and sisters, but we do not understand. To make us understand that we are related, love should be there in between. Now the religion, the most highest religion I say, Islam, should take the rope, the chain, and control the world to make united. And India definitely, Mr. Modi will help him, and we all live as real citizens of the united India. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Okay. I think you had no, you didn't have a question.
Hello.
There's another question. Yes.
I have a question.
Who's that?
Sir?
Yes.
I'm
go ahead.
Jain. I have a question. That is, the opening lines of our preamble starts with, "We the people." Was it not very deliberate? Because even the American Constitution, if I'm not wrong, it started with "We the people." And then something was added to it, that is God, etc., faith in God. We never had this, and we do not want to have it. Is that not correct? That is one question that I wanted to ask. The debates, you know about it, what happened, and how Ambedkar and Nehru were able to prevail over the others in keeping it as "we the people." Another observation that I wanted to make about regarding what you said is, someone was talking about there are many countries which do not have a faith or religion of its own. We have the example of the Scandinavian countries, the happiest countries in the world. Of course, some of them are religious in the sense they don't show it outwardly, but they stand for something that is common to all, that is a welfare state system. What about we talk about cooperative federalism, but we don't give any importance to it these days. How is it that these countries that talk of collective security, or common security, I would say it, are able to survive even to this day with their concepts or ideology of democratic socialism? And the third one I want to ask you is, some of our judges, or while Chief Justice himself, while pronouncing judgments, talk of a divine intervention. What is this divine intervention? Which I don't understand.
All right. Let's start with the last one first. Whether with divine or bovine intervention or any other kind of intervention, if a judge delivers a judgment, he is violating his oath to the Constitution. You have only to live by your oath to the Constitution and the laws. And when you live by your oath to the Constitution and the laws, you certainly bring in your own morality. That's about as far as it goes. Now to come to the other two parts of your question. The first part is a very interesting part, because though the US Constitution may talk of "we the people," when it was framed and when it came into force in 1789, it left out more than half of its own people. There was no such thing here. It left out the blacks completely. Blacks were in fact treated as property. It left out women completely. So there was one half of the white women left out. So it left out a huge number of people who down the road with constitutional amendments it sought to bring in. It took them God knows how many years from 1789 till 1865 to bring the blacks in, and much longer to bring women in, 1920. Now, we had no such thing. So when we started with a clean slate and we said we the people, we meant we the people. And what we gave to minorities, what we gave to pluralities, etc., showed that it reflected we, all the people. So that is the answer to the other part. Now, your second part, your second proposition, was that you have countries like Norway, Scandinavia, etc. Don't forget, very difficult every time I'm told, compare us to Singapore or compare us to Norway or you see, they have a monoculture. It's so much easier to push through something there. This is a land which is so diverse that, I mean, almost every 20 kilometers you change food habits, you change language, you change, it is so baffling and bewildering. How we function at all is something amazing, right? So never compare chalk with cheese. What Norway may do, Norway may well do. It's amazing that we do anything at all, is my answer.
Sir, there are several religious institutions which run so many educational institutions in Kerala. They accept capitation fee, they ask their caste, and they do not comply with the rules of reservation, and not even that of the Supreme Court judgment reservation for the physically disabled. What are the remedies?
Go to court and God help you.
Okay. I think there's a question at the back. Please go ahead.
Hi, before I start with my question, let me congratulate Dr. Jacob Alexander for presenting that 3,000 years of brotherhood in just 15 minutes or a little over, more than 15 minutes. Thank you. Now, Justice Nariman, my question is not related to anything that you've discussed today. It's from the striking down of section 66A of IT. And I'm an academic by profession. So this question is where through that striking down of...
Will you allow her to speak? I can't hear her. Just a...
Through the striking down of that section, you probably, removed an unconstitutional section and bringing freedom of speech in online. But the recent development, probably post-2015, we could see a number of cases which are all branded as anti-government, anything that is written against the government. However, on the contrary, we could see a lot of followers are spreading fake news, right? They're using social media to propagate and spread a lot of bad things, but they're all sort of branded as free speech. So, however, to bring an academic perspective, recently the Professor Ali Khan's arrest, right, of Ashoka University, right, he was arrested without following any due course, just by putting a post which is read by any citizen or any educated person as an innocent, or probably it did not mean anything. But Supreme Court, while granting the bail, they called it as a dog whistle. However, recently, when they reconsidered the case, he was given a gag order that he could not write anything, online. But recently, they have eased the gag order. However, my question is, was striking down of the 66A with an intention of bringing free speech online, was it served its purpose? If not, what is the remedy?
Remedy is you bring me back to the bench. And I'm not being specious. Bring me back to the bench. You have to feel constitutional values, otherwise it's nothing. Yeah.
Is there another question? No. Any other questions from here? Yeah, please go ahead.
Let's make it the last.
So I'm a student of law, so this question is as absolute and simple as it is. So unlike other fields like medicine, engineering, biotechnology, and architecture, which are controlled by natural mechanisms or natural law, unlike all that, law is man-made. So, sir, I am a firm believer that if law is a problem, or if some problem has been interpreted or solved via law, it can be easily done with mere wisdom and common sense. So does that make the subject of law a bit more simple or a complex one? I would like to hear the views both from Alexander Jacob sir and the Honorable Justice.
I'll give you an answer immediate. The immediate answer is there's a very famous footnote in Justice Matthew's judgment in Indira Gandhi's case. And you'll find that footnote at page 520 of the Reporters, 1976 to SCR. Please go to it straight away. The footnote speaks of Lord Coke and King James I. And exactly this question was asked. James I asks his Chief Justice, why can I not preside over the King's bench? After all it requires is common sense. So Lord Coke flattered the king and said, of course, but, and the but was very important. The law consists of artificial, not natural reason. And because it consists of artificial reason, it requires long hours of study before you can even approach it. So therefore, I would advise Your Majesty, of course Your Majesty can do as he pleases, but never to preside over the King's bench.
Respected Justice Rohinton Nariman, Dr. Alexander Jacob, Professor Jamila Begum, Dr. Sajida Bashir, distinguished guests, members of VMFT, legal fraternity, educational institutions, media, and ladies and gentlemen. It's my proud privilege as chairperson of Commemorative Foundation Trust to extend a hearty vote of thanks at the conclusion of this memorable 16th K.M. Bashir Memorial Lecture. First and foremost, we are deeply grateful to Justice Nariman for delivering today's thought-provoking lecture on the fraternity in a secular state, protection of culture and duties. Justice Nariman, your erudition and eloquence have illuminated how fraternity enshrined in our Constitution must be lived as a daily practice of respect, tolerance, and responsibility. We thank you for sharing your wisdom and for inspiring us to take these values forward in our own lives and institutions. We are equally grateful to Dr. Alexander Jacob, a great scholar and charismatic personality who presided over today's meeting with his characteristic warmth, scholarship, and conviction. Sir, your presence today added immense depth and charm to this occasion. I would also like to thank Professor Jamila Begum, our president, for her gracious welcome and coordination of the event. And Dr. Sajida Bashir, our executive vice chairperson, for the commemorative address that so beautifully linked today's event to the larger centenary celebrations of Sri K.M. Bashir. Thanks also for coordinating the interactive session. Much has been said about Bashir during these deliberations. I would like to highlight one aspect which stands above all of his contributions. In the early 82s, there was a thought to set up a memorial for Waka Maulavi, and some intellectuals approached K.M. Bashir. And he took the lead and thus started the effort to build a memorial for Waka Maulavi. But for a long time, not enough support came from the government or the public. So K.M. Bashir decided to do it on his own. He started a charitable trust, purchased a piece of land, built a small office, and started the work. In a short time, the foundation has done amazing level of activities, and in 1990, Bashir's death was an unexpected blow to the organization. But the family came forward to support, and with equal interested, minded people, the foundation has flourished during the past several years. At this juncture, we remember some persons who have contributed immensely to the growth of the institution. One is Muhammad Isa, who was the manager in the beginning. He meticulously ran the office. We remember PM Bashir, who has supervised the construction of the building, the present memorial, and the directors M.A. Azim, Dr. K.M. Nair, Dr. Soman, and an array of people who have supported, nourished the growth of the foundation. Today, the foundation is led by top-notch professionals who have great experience in international organizations. Dr. Geeta is a classmate of Dr. Justice Nariman. We are very proud of that. And that connection has brought Nariman to Commemorative Foundation. And we had the support of our office team and a lot of people in organizing this program. So I would like to express our thanks to all these people. We are very happy that people from far and near arrived here in great respect and memory of K.M. Bashir. We would like to follow his footsteps. We are once again thanking all the luminaries and all the people who participated in the event to make this a grand success. Thank you very much.